Hi, I'm Ewan Blakey, Senior Pastor of Oasis Church. I hope this message gives you hope and helps you take your next step on your Christian journey. We'd love to invite you to come and see us in person at 10 a.m. on Sundays or join us live every Sunday on YouTube. For more info, visit our website, oasischurchperth.com.
True cost of discipleship. The true cost. So I want to dive straight in this morning, and I really want to, before we open the Word of God, I really want to invite you. It's a heavy message when we talk about the cost, the sacrifice involved. And I want to invite you this morning to actually feel the weight of carrying the cross. And the cross wasn't like this, polished, smoothed, varnished, light. The crosses were actually very heavy that they used. They were jagged. If you got close and if you carried one, you were likely to feel the weight of it, get some splinters in your hands and your shoulders, and you would feel the cost of carrying the cross. And I want to intentionally invite you this morning to feel the weight of the cross. So it may get heavy, and I want you to feel the heaviness. Because really it's just an extension of our devotion this morning, of the fragrance of worship that came up before God, to come in again close to the cross and feel it against your face. Would that be all right? Okay, so I don't apologize for the weight this morning. I want you to feel it. Okay, we're going to go to the book of Luke today. We're going to park in Luke all morning. And we're going to start with Luke 14 and verse 25. It will come up on the screen behind me. Large crowds, say large crowds. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. And turning to them, he said, "If anybody comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose any one of you wants to build a tower, wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see that you've got enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation but you're not able to finish it, you're not able to build the walls and put a ceiling on, everyone who sees it will ridicule you." Do you remember that half-built mansion down in Peppy Grove, the Indian Taj Mahal, half-built? People will ridicule you, saying the person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he's not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for peace. That makes good sense. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything, say everything. Say it a little louder. You cannot be my disciples. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it ever be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It should be thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. Wow, hard-hitting words, Jesus. And the context of this passage is that Jesus is turning his attention to the great crowds who follow him, who love the miracles, but don't know if they love the Messiah. And he turns to the masses of people who are following him, and he gives the worst sales pitch in history. The worst. To have me, you must hate your family. To be my disciples, you've got to carry a cross. Before you commit, you've got to make sure that you can fulfill it for your whole life. And if you don't give up everything that you have and everything that you are, you can have no part of this. Worst sales pitch. He doesn't soften the blow, you guys. He doesn't gently approach each one, look them in the face and say, I know that was harsh, I'm really sorry, but it was really more for that guy down there than it was for you because I know who you are and I know your heart. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't give you an incentive plan. Hey, if you follow me for the first 50 days, I'll give you free steak knives. There's no fine print. There's no trial period. If this doesn't work out in the first 3 to 6 months, it's okay. We can end our commitment together. There's no HR mediating. He's making it hard to be a disciple. The bar is set very high, not very low. It's the most unappealing invitation you will ever have. I don't want crowds. I want cross bearers. Who would sign up for that? Well, guess what? You did. Or at least you said you did. Jesus was sifting the crowd that day, and he's still sifting the crowd today with those words that we read that echo in our own soul. Would you still follow Jesus if he asked you to bear a cross? Because true disciples in the crowd are the ones who carry crosses. Interesting to note, at this point, Jesus hadn't gone to the cross. A cross was symbolic of a Roman torture device. It simply meant death to them. He was inviting them into death even without the promise of resurrection or redemption. He was going, take up your cross and follow me. And what it meant for every person listening that day was death. Pain, shame, loss of dignity, loss of reputation. Without redemption, without resurrection. So, what is the cross then? Because Jesus is telling this story from pre-cross. What does he mean when he says, hey, pick up your cross and follow me? Well, I think a really good way of understanding what the cross is for us as disciples is when we look at Jesus' own moment in the Garden of Gethsemane before he went to the cross. He had a moment with his Father in the garden, and there's a prayer exchange going on, and we find Jesus in the garden sweating drops of blood, going through anguish, actually relenting, giving over his will so that the Father's will may be done. And Luke 22 verse 42 says this, Father, if you are willing, in other words, I don't really want to go through this, but if you're willing, if you would take this cup from me, I'd be happy. I'd be really happy if I didn't have to carry a cross, be nailed to it, and suffer a physical death. Then he says, yet, not my will, not my desires, but your desire be done. And an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish over the wrestle of wills, he prayed even more earnestly, strengthen my faith, God, that I may be able to let my will bow down so that I can embrace yours. And his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. And in this moment, we understand the cross. We know what a cross is. The cross that Jesus asks us to pick up and follow him with is our own will, coming into submission with the will of the Father. That's what the cross is. When Jesus says, pick up your cross, he's saying, let your will come into submission to the Father's will. It's very simple. At the core of discipleship, at the very core, right in there, is giving up your will so that the Father's will may be done. Not my will, your will. Not my will, your will. Not my way, your way. It's disciple language. It's disciple language. And if we can't submit our will to the will of the Father, it's simply impossible to be a disciple. Because as Yui said, whatever you follow is your master. And if you can't submit your will to the will of the Father, it's just impossible to be a disciple, seeing as that's the very core of discipleship. He gives us an example of what it looks like too in that opening passage in Luke. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father, mother, wife, children, brother, sister, yes, even own lives, such a person can't be my disciple. Sounds pretty harsh, but Jesus is using Jewish hyperbole here. Hyperbole. He's not giving a black and white approach, but what he is doing is commanding undivided loyalty. So this is how it sounds. Instead of hating mother and father, it's more like, you must love me more than you love mother and father. That's how it was sounding to the Jewish people who were there. He's not against family. He loves family. He knows family is your first ministry. But he's saying, if anything comes before me in your life, you'll find it very hard to yield your own will to the will of the Father, because if you love something more than you love me, that thing will take precedence. So he's coming after the things that we love most in our life. Family is one of them. Kids, my kids, I love my kids. Sometimes I'll be willing to put them above the will of the Father just to see them happy, to see them flourish. I want to protect them. But Jesus is saying, unless you love me more than you love your family, you will find it very hard to submit your will to the will of the Father. So Jesus, he passed the test of the cross. When in the garden he decided to embrace the Father's will and let his own will go. He did well. But there was another man that didn't do well. And there's a story of him in the book of Luke as well, the rich young ruler. It's found in Luke 18, verse 18 to 23. And this rich young ruler, he's one of the crowd guys. He's in the crowd. He's following Jesus. He's loving the miracles. He's enjoying what he's seeing. He's enjoying what he's hearing. He's a good man too, because he said that, since he was a boy, he'd fulfilled the 10 Commandments. He'd done everything in the law. However, he has this interaction with Jesus where he says, what do I need to do to follow after you? Because I've done everything in the Word, I've done everything in the law. And he's faced with this moment of true cost. True cost discipleship. Jesus says, give away all of your wealth and follow me. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Because he loved something more than he loved Jesus. It was his wealth. Jesus, he asks you boldly, unashamedly, for the things that you love more than him to be crucified. In order for something greater, the fullness of him. When we yield our will to his will, he fills us with his fullness. We know this because Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ. And I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. We're laying down our will for the Father's will. We're committing to go to the cross because then we know Jesus will be full in us. It's an exchange. The end of the road's not death. The end of the road is being filled with resurrection life. So he's coming after the things in your life that you love more than him. You probably know what they are already. He's not afraid to come after your relationships. He's not afraid to come after your possessions. He's not afraid to come after your status, your reputation, your dignity. He's not even afraid to come after your very life so that God will take first place in you. And this, my friends, is the cruciform life that we're called to as Jesus' disciples. Our salvation might be free, but our discipleship is very costly. And because of this cost of discipleship, we've become very comfortable with a form of Christianity that doesn't actually cost us very much. Sometimes the cost is so high that we dull it down, dim it down to make it an acceptable form of a cost for us so that we can engage. We just give him a little something. Like instead of giving all of my wealth or even 10%, I'll just chuck in 1%. And that'll be enough because I can't embrace the cost. Or I can't come to church every Sunday because there's other things I want to do with my life. So I'll come one in every 2, one in every 3, one in every 4. And I'll embrace a life of moral minimums because I can't take on the full weight of the Bible because some of it's just so confronting that I'll embrace some of the Word of God, but not all of the Word of God. And when God asks me to do something, well, then I'll make a choice about it, whether it feels comfortable to me or not. God's asking me to evangelize to that person in the supermarket. I don't know, I feel a bit uncomfortable with that. I'm going to leave obedience to the side. Because the cost is high. Anything that challenges me or confronts me, I'll put aside. Because I want my Christianity to be comfortable. Not super comfortable, because I know there's a cost, but comfortable enough that it's not going to take everything from me. Jesus wasn't just after fans. He was really after followers who would actually sell all and follow him. And he was very clear about the commitment involved. He was very clear about that. He was unashamed about that. He warned you, it will cost you nothing less than putting to death every other love that competes with me. I mean, who can do that? I mean, really, who can do that? Who can pick up a cross and follow him? Who can give up everything that competes with him? It's a narrow path. But it's the narrow path that leads to life. I mean, are you prepared to do that? Are you really prepared to do that? Be careful saying yes to that kind of Christianity. Be careful what you pray when you ask for discipleship, because if you ask for him to be your father and you to be his child, and you ask him to engage with you in a discipleship kind of life, then it will cost you everything. He will come after your idols. He will come after your addictions. He'll come after your priorities. He'll come after your privileges. Because he's a jealous God. Are you feeling the weight of the cross? Are you feeling some splinters in your arms? If Jesus is after a cruciform type of faith, then what stops us? What are the cross dodges that we have in our lives that we just slide aside from the cross? Don't nail me. Get that nail away from me. Here's some cross dodges. These are some big words. I wanted to share with you a few things. Dualism. Dualism is a cross dodger. Dualism is when we split life into spiritual and secular. And we say, God, you can have my spiritual life and I'll yield to you in that, but you can't have my secular life, the me stuff. You can't have my personality. You can't have my work or my relationships. It's a half surrender. And it pretends that the cross doesn't touch every corner of your life. Dualism. I'm wondering, have you separated your life into this is spiritual, church, prayer, worship, but this is secular, and I can't let the cross touch secular? Here's another cross dodger, legalism. Turning our surrender into a rigid checklist of rules. If I do this, if I do this, if I do this, it's surrender. But self-will isn't yielded, but redirected into earning God's approval through performance. We feel like we're doing discipleship because we can tick the checklist off. It swaps the cross for a scorecard. And it misses the relational heart of you and God in discipleship, where He gets to tell you the things you need to give up. Here's another one, hedonism. We're going with the isms. Where pursuing pleasure of comfort is the ultimate goal of life. Your philosophy about life is feeling good and comfortable. This is a word for the Western church. It dodges the cross for the sake of feeling good. Peace, inner peace. It's the crowd chasing for miracles, for thrills, but not counting the cost. Discipleship says, I'll suffer if God wills it, whereas hedonism says, I'll follow only if it feels good. And I think post-COVID, you guys, we've seen this play out in churches all across the Western world. We've had a taste of what it was like living in our homes, working from home, doing baking, sourdough, living a life with our family, and it felt good. And since then, honestly, across the Western church, attendance to church has slumped. Serving in a team has slumped. It's thinned out because people have been trading the weight of commitment for the ease of staying home and showing up only when it suits them. You guys, that's hedonism. Here's another ism, Gnosticism. This is like an ancient heresy. It's one of the things the early church had to address. It came from an ancient Greek religion, and this is what it is. It's when you treat the physical world and your physical body as evil and irrelevant and prioritize spiritual knowledge or practices. At face value, it sounds righteous, right? Elevating the spirit, minimizing the body. Elevating spiritual knowledge, minimizing like having to go to work. It's actually an ancient heresy because true yielding is holistic. True yielding involves body, your physical body, your soul, and your spirit, all according to God's redemptive plan. God doesn't hate the environment. He doesn't hate the physical world. God doesn't hate your body. He created it and He plans to redeem it. And our yielding needs to be holistic, cutting through all of those things. Our body is important, you guys, because it's the temple of the Holy Spirit. And I think this heresy has crept into the church and it's saying, you know, your spirituality is the thing you need to yield, but your physical body, don't worry about it. It's not important. You can put it to the side. Okay, I'm leaving the isms for two more. Pride. Another cross dodger is pride, where we elevate our own self-will as a badge of strength. And men, we reject surrender as a sign of weakness. Pride says, I'll follow my way because I care about how I look on the outside. I want to be strong. Whereas yielding says, Jesus, I'm following your way. Here's one more, fear. We talk about fear a lot around here. Fear's a cross dodger because fear always wants to play it safe. It likes control. And the cross is not a safe place. The cross is a very unsafe place. Fear loves control, whereas the cross encourages bold, risk-it-all kind of faith. Cross dodgers. Will you stand with me this morning as we just sort of start to wrap it up? I think we need to invite the sifting again. I think we should always invite the sifting. King David, in Psalm 139, he prayed this: search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. I just wonder if you could pray that just this morning. Would you search me, God, and know my heart? Test me and know my anxious thoughts. We could also pray something like this: God, help us wherever we've dodged the cross. Uncover the excuses that we've rehearsed and the idols that we've embraced. Jesus doesn't have some weird sense of sickness inviting you to go to the cross. He's not obsessed with death. He doesn't want you to die for dying's sake. But he invites you into a cruciform lifestyle because he's jealous for you. He has a love that is so complete that it needs no competitors. In church, when we live a cruciform life, we don't lose, we gain. Because in Luke 9:23, Jesus says again, he says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily, and follow me. And he says this amazing verse: for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will save it. Jesus wants you to give up your life so that he can fill you with his resurrection life. It's a beautiful exchange. Death is not the end. Resurrection life is the end. That when you come to the end of yourself, Jesus meets you there. Jesus fills you right there with real life, abundant life. John 10:10, I came that you might have life and life in abundance. But if we're carrying our own will, if we're satisfied with our own life, not picking up our cross and following him, we will never taste the abundant life that he came to give us. The cross bearers become the kingdom builders. Imagine what Jesus could do with just a handful of people who have traded in their life for his. Imagine what he could do with a handful of people who were fully yielded unto him. Imagine the power in those people. Imagine how they could shake this world upside down for Jesus Christ. But it takes a sell all kind of life, a sell all kind of discipleship. The cross bearers who become the kingdom builders are the ones who mend families, heal wounds, and salt the earth with his love. So I want to invite you. Feel the weight. Feel the weight. Feel the weight. Just close your eyes. Feel the weight. Feel the weight of the cross right now. See it on your shoulder. Rub your face against the jagged edges. Feel the splinters in your hands. And see Jesus just up ahead. And you're following him. You're following him. And you're saying, not my will. Not my will, God, but yours be done. Not my will, but yours be done in me. Not my will, not my plans, not my way, not my comfort. But your will be done in me. Your will be done in me. Your will be done in me, God, even if it costs me. Even if I have to lay down my wealth, my relationships, even if I have to lay down my reputation, if I have to lay down my life, God, not my will. Not my will, but your will be done. Who can count the cost? Who can count the cost? Who can count the cost?